Greetings, Mark Garang, publisher of The Sun, and my guest today is our regular guest, actually, George Epstein, Sun columnist.
Good afternoon, Mark.
Hey, how are you? It's
great.
actually been a while.
It has. We had various challenges scheduling things, but
Yeah.
one of the things I escaped town for was my grandson's high school graduation, and out in Oregon and in Portland, Oregon, and it's a different experience. Big facility, one graduation after another. Each high school grabs this facility for a little while, and thousands of people, and it was quite the event. It was a different kind of graduation. Yeah.
So is Portland feel as liberal as it always people say?
Absolutely. You still go into a coffee shop at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. The place is filled with people who are 28 years old, and you have no idea what they do for a living or how they can afford the $8 coffee or whatever it is. It's a different place, but it's a warm, friendly place. It's a safe place. Homelessness, there's a whole topic there to discuss, but probably a little less of a problem than it was, and they've invested in some housing. But it's a big city with big city challenges, and I think they do a better job than a lot of cities.
Yeah. Well, it's a nice, I think, I know the homeless issue's always been an issue, like some of those Western cities, San Francisco, but, you get it's a pretty popular city. You get a lot of smart people who want to move there, and it's a good culture. And in a liberal way, if you like that thing, but just in terms of the population.
And as cities go, as soon as you get a few miles out of the middle of town, you're out in the middle of state forests and federal land and waterfalls. And in terms of a city you can escape quickly from and get into nature quickly, it's a little better that way, a lot better that way than most cities.
Yeah, well, that's why I guess a lot of people have moved there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the Northwest, that part. So anyway, the last few columns, George, when I read them, I just want to go kill myself. Like the world is coming to an end.
Yeah, it's true.
But this is Tuesday. We're not off schedule, but usually we meet when your column has just come out. But you haven't had a column for 2 weeks, so you got one coming out in 2 days in the paper.
Right.
Is that going to be a little cheerier?
It is. So I'm going to lay out a couple of the problems that are still out there and a couple of the negatives, and then say, but it doesn't have to be this way, because there's some awfully nice things happening in whether it's beautiful days and spring and early summer weather.
But nobody likes to read that stuff.
They don't, and so you're right. They skim over it more quickly. I do get a bigger audience when I'm whining about stuff or complaining about stuff, and more of a response from the public.
So what are you writing about?
It's tough. I don't want to give too much away,
okay.
but for the first time in my whole life, I'm going to write a little bit about soccer, because I actually am enjoying some of this World Cup stuff that's going on. It's crazy good stuff, and it's fun to watch, and the enthusiasm and excitement and the happiness of people from all over the world and what they're experiencing, boy, extremely positive, and generally sort of nice play. The Australians were incredibly dirty in that second half with the Americans. So there's a mixed bag. But as a general rule, it's been better than I expected.
I think one of the most interesting stories is how Boston kind of ran out of beer. The Scots came over and basically drank all the beer. Yeah. And one bar was saying that they actually serve 3 times more beer than they do in St. Paddy's Day.
Yeah, the great claim to fame of soccer fans is drunkenness and rowdiness, and in a fair number of cases, violence. And as a general rule, as long as they stick to just drunkenness, that's okay. Yeah.
Well, I guess there's a meme going around with these little babies. In 9 months, these little babies were killed.
Those Scotsmen are out there making stuff happen. You're absolutely right.
Anyway, so what's going on? One thing I wanted to mention is about the Economic Council, and it is sort of in limbo, I guess. And they sold their building or their condo. It's a condo to the school, to the Woodland Charter School, right?
That's not exactly right. So the building was pretty much from day one was a condominium where half of it was owned by the College for Lifelong Learning, Granite State College. Right. It became, and the other half was owned by the Economic Council. The Economic Council built it and then had to sell off half of it in order to finish paying for the construction.
And selling it to Granite State.
To Granite State, and the university system. I was on the board of the university system at the time, and it worked out well for a bunch of years for Granite State College. But as they became solely an online school, and as they were folded into UNH for efficiency purposes, a location, a physical facility was no longer necessary. They first rented it and then sold that part of the condominium to the Northeast Woodlands Charter School.
Yeah.
And now, as the Economic Council appears to be fading away, or at least less active, they're selling off, or I don't know whether it's closed or not. They did. They've sold off the rest of the building to the charter school, which was probably the right thing for everybody. They weren't really two compatible operations in that building, with a bunch of little kids running around and people trying to run businesses, and the traffic in and out and so on. So
I mean, that's sort of the end of the story, but I mean, and I think, and we did a story on the course, and Jack Cuddy, the executive director, is still there, and he's saying she's trying to transition to something else, because what's left in the Economic Council part is the SCORE program and a revolving loan, and theoretically you could run that out of a closet, but then the other part, so there's that part, but then there's the other part is a tech village, and the whole thing was created 30 years ago, whenever it was, and I was around when they did it, and obviously you were, is with the big federal grant. I think that was Greg, right?
Judd Gregg was very active in it.
Yeah.
Yes, he was probably the key player.
One of those earmarks, and it really hasn't panned out.
No. The intent was to create an incubator-like facility that, like other incubators that were popping up all over the country, small, in this case, technology-oriented businesses would get their start there, and they would grow, and they would reach a size where either they would buy a lot on the grounds because there was a bunch of land there, or they would move out and expand, or they would stay there for a bunch of years, and it would spawn a technology industry in this area. And that was viewed as a clean industry, one that would be very compatible with the tourism businesses around here and so on. And it didn't work out. It didn't not completely work out. So you had a company in Animetrics, which was in there, I want to say for 10 years. I don't know exactly how long, but that was successful for a while. They ran on small, multi-million-dollar government grants, and it was around facial recognition, and they were just in the wrong business at the wrong time. It didn't succeed as a business long term, but you employed a bunch of people in that business, and the business itself might not have been successful, but it created technology employment in the area. You also had Rapid Insight, which was a successful business, grew to be, I want to say 15, 16, 17 people, all in that building, and provided employment and good paying employment for a whole group of people. And that business was ultimately sold. And you're in a period of transition where those kinds of small technology companies are largely virtual companies.
Right. So that's I'm going to interrupt you here, but that's, I mean, the big picture. And I can remember, like, I am known for knowing nothing. Right. That's my. It
works for you.
I know it does. And honestly, I can remember 30 years ago when I was starting. Then that thing started. I'm thinking, this ain't going to work. Like, it just doesn't make sense. That the only way, and we've had the conversations about Berlin too. Like, okay, high tech in Berlin or something. The only way it works if you get a CEO, someone who wants to live here and bring their stuff here, or it starts like where you started your business out of wherever you started, in the garage. Yeah. Like every high tech tycoon. But even with your business at the end, right, it was going more remote and virtual.
Yeah, and so COVID put an end.
I'm going to
go ahead.
But why doesn't? And I thought back then is that it doesn't work because we don't have people, high-tech people want to be around other high-tech people, they want to be around universities, all that kind of stuff. So why fundamentally doesn't it work here when the other side of it, after being negative, is that we have a great place to live?
We do, and we attract a lot of high-tech people who are living in the woods. And they're scattered all over the Mount Washington Valley and beyond. And the employees of Echo, virtually all of whom at least initially, were working for the company that purchased Echo from me and the other stockholders But even by then, we had closed much of the building down and sold the building before we sold our stock in the company. But those staff are all still here. A couple might have moved, but they all live here. They live in all the towns in the area. They are continue to make good livings, and in some cases, very good livings.
I mean, working at home.
Working at home, and that's the model. That's what small and maybe even mid-sized software companies are largely work from home kinds of operations. And where the headquarters going to be? Honestly, the headquarters are not so much where a bunch of people want to live nowadays. They're where the money is. And so the other component that we never really had a lot of success doing up here, there was briefly an angel investment group in the area that invested in a few companies, including Animetrics. But there's no money here, and so the Boston area, southern New Hampshire, the Seacoast in particular, continues to spawn small software companies and other technology-related businesses. And the funding is there, the angel investors, the VC firms, they're in those locations, and they happily hire people all over the place. So I've recently joined the board of a company that's just getting started, and the three founders, one of them's in London, one of them's in the New York City area, and one's in Oakland, California. Those are the three founders. They knew each other beforehand, but they formed the company, and the staff will be wherever they are. And they get together once in a while, and that's fine. And we're on the video calls and all the rest of it.
So do you think, I mean, the whole high-tech picture for locally, even though, I think people envision, we're going to have big buildings and centers and all that. So if that's gone, right, this is the way. But do you think we finally could get our comeuppance, not a comeuppance, but a value out of this where we could get a bunch of high-tech people, but they just happen to be working out of their homes?
Well, we do now. And it's true that you could probably, the area could probably have social events, networking events, that kind of thing that would try to bring those people together. They're notoriously difficult people to bring together, but they do learn from each other, and having interaction and having more interaction among those people who are working from home would be a real plus. I think that would be an economic development thing. But some of the people who are buying some of the nice houses and buying some of the land and want to live out in the woods, and who are in one example, training for an Ironman competition while his AI bots are writing all of his programs. That's what's going on. Watch the next guy you watch running down the street, pull up and stop him. You probably shouldn't do this. Pull up and stop him and say, "Are you working?" And he'll say, "Well, not exactly." He said, "But I've given instructions to my AI, and it's working away, and I'm going to try to do a 5-minute mile."
Okay, so let's just wrap it up by, and I don't think you actually said it, but why didn't it work in a big way, the high-tech culture here? When that technology village was designed to bring a lot in, it didn't happen. Like, why not?
Well, I don't think you have any really rural area that's had that kind of burst of success. But we attracted a bunch of additional people to move to this area for those two companies in particular, but there were a couple of other little startups that were thinking about moving in and that sort of thing. So I hate to say it was a complete failure. It worked to a degree for more than 10 years.
Right.
So that's got something going for it. But what do you need? Colleges are the breeding point for those kinds of companies. And so we had an office in Ann Arbor, Michigan, for example, that University of Michigan just pumped out bodies, and you had all these resources available to you. And you had money. So Ann Arbor, Michigan had a VC firm right down the street that was tied in with the University of Michigan and their research projects, and they wrote checks. So the money is a factor, a big educational institution is a factor, and simply economies of scale, simply reaching a critical point where the attraction crosses a line. And Austin, Texas is the best example, but you've got the University of Texas, you got a ton of money coming in there, Musk and all the rest of them, but they just hit this critical mass, and now you have a whole bunch of tech firms living and headquartering there, but their staffs are scattered all over the country.
So
we should live with and enjoy the fact we have a bunch of people in our community who make good livings in technology.
Okay, so when I'll just ask one more question. So when the technology village was conceived back 30 years ago, whenever it was, did you think it was a good idea? At that point, did you think, oh, this could work?
I was skeptical of how completely or how large an audience it could attract. I thought the creation of First Run Angel Investment Group was a good idea. There were educational events going on that were sponsored by the council. So I thought, yeah, and I thought Granite State College would be another plus because they were looking to do some technology education. And so I thought it had a shot of being more successful than it was. I also thought it had a shot at being a complete crash and burn, which it wasn't either.
Okay, that's good. All right, let's move on if it's okay.
Yeah.
Ready? Now, the selectmen, the Conway selectmen are always doing something or other. And so we had two selectmen that resigned, and there's this whole story behind that, if you want to talk about that. But this whole idea whether you should appoint a selectman or have a special election.
I have a particular point I want to make, and then I'll leave it alone. It's not up to me to decide who Conway should use to replace their vacant selectman positions. But there's this theme when there's a vacancy on one of these boards where the person who came in second in the election is the logical, appropriate person to be named. Wrong. Just the opposite of right. And that frustrates me, the logic of that. In particular, when the person who came in second was an incumbent, the people who vote are as much voting against someone as voting for someone. And that's unfortunately the case for many of our elections. And when they vote out an incumbent, but that incumbent came in second in the race, that's exactly the person you shouldn't appoint. The majority of the community wants something different, someone different. And the Conway, for example, has done it and did it recently, and other towns do as well. Yeah, so I don't need to do names. I'm just saying philosophically, it's just absolutely in the wrong direction. And so that frustrates me and annoys me that they think that's a good idea.
Yeah, and it says, everybody knows it's Carl Thibodeau, and he's a good guy, and he was selectman forever. But you're not picking on Carl per se, obviously, but just the concept.
Yeah, people wanted to change.
Yeah, yeah.
And I've got a criticism for you for the helpful, constructive criticism for the Conway Daily Sun, not for you necessarily personally.
We rarely get those. Usually they're just nasty criticism.
They're not constructive. That's true. So a couple of years ago, or a year ago, you printed an article as a news article from an organization called Standing Trees.
Oh, I remember that.
Okay, and I criticized you then, and I said, gee, you should have checked them out. They are actually the litigant on one side of a court case, or a participant in the litigation on one side of a court case, and you ran a news article, and they presented it as a news article that clearly supported their position, and they could have been presented as an editorial and with an explanation as who these people were and what stake they had in it. So that was a mistake, and we talked about that. And you agreed, I think, to a large degree. Yeah. You printed an editorial recently from a guy named Chuck Douglas.
Oh, Chuck, yeah.
And Chuck Douglas has a long history in New Hampshire. He was a one-term congressman, not very popular. He was, for a little while, a Supreme Court justice in New Hampshire. And his claim to fame was this incredibly angry divorce case from his fourth wife. He's on his fifth one now, that went on for a long time and involved ultimately his wife being disbarred. She was another attorney. They were business partners. And his claim to fame in that, I don't know, one of his claims to fame was that he fought tooth and nail to keep the filings associated with the divorce a secret. He thought that stuff was private and secret and shouldn't be exposed. And he wrote this absurd, I shouldn't say absurd, this hypocritical
not the one in the paper you're talking about.
Yeah, the one that you printed.
Oh, you're saying it's hypocritical.
You printed it a couple of weeks ago because he wrote a thing about how the right to know law is so important and the town of Conway should be giving the newspaper all this information and so on. I'm not even arguing one way or the other how the town of Conway should respond to a 91A claim for right to know, but printing his column when it was so hypocritical, since he's created law, case law, about how the handling of personal and private information should be done. And he was very much on the secrecy side when it affected him.
You're right, but that was okay. And so I'm going to see Chuck on Thursday because we have our awards, New Hampshire awards thing down in Manchester, and he's always there. He's a publisher of a small newspaper now.
That's right.
And it's in, I forget the name of it. It's a little weekly in Southwest New Hampshire. So I'll see him. I'll give him. I'll say hello on behalf of you.
And putting a little blurb in there to explain where this guy's coming from would have been interesting. It wasn't specifically his case, it was another judge's, but there were a whole group of women who were getting divorced from judges and high-powered lawyers who filed a bunch of complaints 25 years ago about the fact that judges in New Hampshire were favoring their brethren in court cases, which is, I know, a shock and a surprise to you. And Henry Mock of Jackson was the lead guy in the House of Representatives to pursue what became an impeachment trial of New Hampshire's Chief Justice at the time. This was 25 years ago, and Henry Mock was the lead guy, and the House impeached the Supreme Court chief. And there was then a trial in the Senate, just like a presidential impeachment, and he escaped conviction by the Senate. The Senate didn't convict him, but Henry led the charge to act on that. And just so I've been on a charge about corruption and, I should say, hypocrisy among the politically powerful in New Hampshire, and that was an example. And printing his column without, which was fine, it was an opinion column, but wrapping it with some of his background wouldn't have been a bad idea.
Well, I mean, one is that we don't do that. I mean, we don't say, if someone writes a letter about something and say, oh, by the way, don't you know you had this, you had this history there or something. I mean, that's perfectly appropriate to do this.
Fair enough.
And the other thing is that, Chuck, you're talking about his divorce.
Yeah.
Right, so that's, okay, and I'm agreeing with you in a broader sense of hypocrisy, but that's his private thing. He may even believe that. He may believe that.
But
stuff should be
his divorce led to his wife being disbarred, and it led to a bunch of court cases about stuff like keeping this sort of stuff private. And you can say it was different, but it clearly those kinds of filings are normally public information, and he battled tooth and nail to keep that stuff secret. Not all the stuff, but the basic filings were.
Because it's personal.
Right. Well,
interest.
And certainly the stuff that you're trying to get, absolutely understandably, as a newspaper in this valley, you're trying to get information that would certainly potentially be personal information about.
But I think it's different. Personal
people.
information is different if it's personal and you're an employee of a town, and if you're personal, it's your divorce. It's your divorce.
Here was a judge, a congressman, but fair enough.
Okay, I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm not defending him there, but I think we all live with hypocrisies. I am defending him. We all live with hypocrisies, and he's very active in terms of right to know stuff. There are two cases, and so we filed the right to know. Right. So what do you think about that?
Well, before I get there, I have a question for you. Do you know whether or not Chuck Douglas, who does this for a living, is defending or representing in some way someone who's a claimant or a complainant with regard to the town of Conway's issues? In other words, does he have a stake in that?
No way. Why would you say that?
Because that's what he does for a living. He sues towns and businesses.
Right,
okay, so you know he's not.
Well, I don't know he's not. I have no reason. My connection with him is that he's also connected with the ACLU. You know Giles Bissonnette? So
No.
he's the top attorney at the ACLU, and he's been advising us.
Okay.
And so the reason they didn't take the case, because they do, the ACLU takes cases pro bono.
Right.
So he calls it institutionally, they don't take our case, because they take cases that involve civil rights and police. You know, this is just, in Conway, it's just basically a pretty straightforward right to know. So he's so Giles has been advising us a little bit, even though he's not taking the case.
Gotcha.
And how he advises, so we filed the first right to know. We don't know, we don't know about right to know. We
Fill out
just
the
follow,
papers.
fill out the paperwork. Have AI help us.
Yeah,
Frankly, it's
bet.
amazing, right?
Yeah.
And so we asked this broad thing of give us all the information about what's this complaint that we know about. So this one part of the story is that it's unbelievable to me that people at town hall think nobody would ever find out about this. They got an investigation.
Well, you have real money involved.
Yeah, $26,000 and a real investigation. And how someone's not going to know about that? I mean, someone came to us who's familiar with town hall and says, "Hey, ask that." Right?
Okay, yeah.
So our first right to know was asking about everything, and that and the town had hired Hastings over here in Freiburg, and then they hired this McLean outfit, southern part of the state, and they say it's all attorney privilege. So right, it's all because it's the report they did all the work. So this is like one of those things. Duh, why didn't we think of this? So Giles at the ACLU says, don't ask them for the stuff to the attorney. Ask for the original complaints, anything in town hall before the attorneys were involved. So that's what we did. So that's what they're considering now.
So I would never comment on a case, about any of the specifics, but the personnel matters should probably be done in the dark. They're specifically excluded. I mean, there's language right in 91A, the law that is the right to know law in New Hampshire. Personnel matters are specifically excluded. And what the courts seem to have carved out, as best I can tell, which I think is pretty reasonable, is that the outcomes of those cases and how they would affect conceivably the public and is appropriate for the public's right to know, those are accessible through 91A, through the right to know law, whereas a complaint filed against a specific individual, I can't believe that is appropriate for release without it being vetted, without there being an outcome associated with it, a settlement associated with it. I don't see how the individual personnel matters of people employed by public government should be open and available.
Well, you got to make a distinction between personnel and elected officials.
Why?
Because they're elected officials. That's why they're not personnel. If you're just an employee down at town hall, that's an internal matter if something happens. But if this involves public money against an elected official, which apparently it is, then that is definitely within the public interest to know. And the case is, and why it's changed in a good way for us on the media side, is that, and the ACLU was involved with this one in 220, union leaders sued Salem, blah, 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 police department for discipline action. So with the courts, there's another case too, the Seacoast newspapers took somebody else to court. And so the courts recently, in the last 10 years, have kind of separated to say it's a balance of the public interest.
Right.
So some of the personnel stuff, if it's like your medical stuff, okay, whatever, that's private. But when it comes to something as blatant as a selectman resigns, there's an investigation, the town spent $26,000, sorry, it's public.
The raw complaint by someone against someone else without investigation, without proof, without a due process and an outcome associated with that, it's not obvious to me. You've got to get people to run for these offices. If any particular employee of the town can accuse me of something as and I am an employee as a selectman. I receive, I don't know what it is, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000. I'm not enthusiastic about that stuff being open to the right to know law without any vetting and determination in terms of the accuracy of it.
If you're an elected official and you're accused of doing something, either you're doing something really wrong, which the public should know because they put their faith in you, or you didn't, and you just say, I didn't do anything wrong. I mean, that's just the price you pay of being an elected official.
Well, see, I think that's a high price. And I think it discourages what we already have a challenge with, which is getting people to run.
I mean, how many times, that's sort of like I won't go there in terms of like people, like this whole thing about keeping women's names secret when they have charges, right? Well, some men will say, wait a minute, that means women can charge men all the time. Well, they don't. The reality is that 99% of the cases when a woman charges a domestic violence against a man, it's true. right? I mean, it just is. I mean, I don't know about 99%, but mostly it's true.
Okay,
Right?
yeah.
So I would say in this case, how many officials have resigned over complaints that we know locally? None. So we got one. It's a real complaint. The public has the right to know. It's the price you pay.
Yeah, see, I don't, and I'm a big fan of the right to know law and lots of open air on a lot of different things, but highly personal, individual accusations prior to any determination of accuracy.
We're redacting the name of the complainant, for one thing.
Well, but you're not protecting the accused at all, and I'm not sure that that's appropriate until that person has had a right to defend themselves. And I think they have an expectation of privacy for anything related to personnel matters. It will be interesting to see what a judge has to say. So, for example, an accusation goes against a police officer. Yeah. The one you were describing, and that was in favor of the people asking for that to be exposed. Right. The trick there is, to what degree is the police officer's performance and the right of other people who perhaps have been arrested by that police officer to be able to use that to challenge the testimony of that police officer. So you're absolutely right. That gets into some very interesting areas that I find very difficult. And the same would be true of an accusation against an elected official prior to there being any determination of truth or accuracy.
Well, in a free society that we are, you know, we always say that, boy, if you get to carry a gun, you're a police officer, it is a very high standard. It is a very high standard. Yeah. You don't get much protection. You screw up. Sorry. And if you're an elected official, that's part of the deal. It's, you know, it's kind of like, here's a kind of a ridiculous example, but, you know, we don't do it, but, you know, if there was a big crash out here, on the intersection, you know, somebody's laying out in the street and we take a picture and put it in the paper or whatever, they would say, I can't believe you violated my privacy. And you say, sorry, it's the price we pay in a free society. You're in the middle of the street, you know, and I mean, believe me, I've been on the other side of that stuff. And
I think there's a line, and I think when you go from accusation, even gossip, because you probably know more than I do, since you have some sort of internal information coming from someone. I'm sure you know more than I do, but there's a line, and until there's some factual basis for it, painting someone as being accused of something, particularly if it's something serious or embarrassing, I have a hard time with that suddenly being in the public without any vetting of the accuracy of that information. But
well, that's what we're trying to find out. I mean, if we heard that something was going on in a town hall, and people ask us to look at stuff all the time, and we say, until there's something in the court, you know, we're not going to print rumors, right? Yeah. This is an investigation. There's actual report, and $26,000 was spent of public money. The people have a right to know. Pretty simple. Very simple.
All right. Well, I'm interesting to see what the judge's ruling will be. That will be a ruling I will read from beginning to end.
Well, we'll see if we, you know, who knows? Maybe we'll just let it go. Maybe the Conway Daily Sun won't pursue it, but we'll see how that goes. Anyway, it's a good thing. I just am surprised, and that's what I said at the beginning, is that, and I realize if you're in the town hall, and, you know, they're all, I know most of them, they're all good people, so this is not like a negative personal thing, but how to think that you're going to have a report that costs $26,000 that nobody's ever going to find out about it. What do? Put in a line item? And
well, fair enough. And the Sun has played the role of shining a light on a lot of stuff. So, you know, my criticisms truly are constructive, and my admiration for the positive impact the Sun has on our local government and our local community is, I think, very extensive.
That was the whole point of this discussion.
You wanted to get me to say
that? All right, we got a few minutes. What else do you want to talk about? I mean, anything on the state level, elections?
Yeah, so we have the filing periods closed for the primaries. And one of the, and I'm sorry, I don't have the numbers right off the top of my head, but there are 400 House seats in New Hampshire, and you have about 330 Democrats who are filed at all in the 400 districts. So there are 70 that are not even being contested, and there are only about 280 Republican candidates for seats. There are 120 or so districts in the House that won't have, or they might have a write-in, or they can name somebody after the primary. So they probably will fill that with warm bodies. But people who are not even putting their names on the ballot, there are 120 of the 400 that don't have a Republican. And the reason is gerrymandering. At least that's a significant part of it. And the fact is that these are such guaranteed seats, either for the Democrat or for a Republican, in so many of the districts in New Hampshire, they don't even bother running. Yeah. And that's sad. And it is a function of the gerrymandering. And if you look at a town like Madison, and you look at all the crazy mixes of towns that we're combined with randomly, with Moultonborough, with Tamworth, with Effingham, Ossipee, I think it's Effingham, Ossipee, and in 2 different districts, we have 4 total House reps that we're voting for. We have almost exactly the right number of people to have 1 rep. Town of Madison, 1 rep. Simple, straightforward. They know who they represent. Everybody does well. But that wasn't going to work. They were afraid when they painted the picture that it wouldn't come out right. And by jamming Moultonborough in there with Tamworth and crisscrossing it enough, they figure they'll get enough Republicans in there to make sure that it's Republican. And both parties do it. Republicans are better at it. There's no question about it, and certainly in New Hampshire. But the gerrymandering really reduces the competitive nature of our campaign.
Well, and they're crazy. Like the Anita Burroughs district is Bartlett and Sandwich.
Sandwich, yeah. I mean, they don't. How many people in Bartlett know anybody in Sandwich, and vice versa? Yeah. Some, but they don't even know each other.
Yeah, no, it's not. But Conway's going to be a good one because we're bluish, I guess now, but we're purplish in general.
Yeah.
And with Karen Umberger's running as Republican, and Steve Woodcock and Tom Bucco aren't running.
Right.
So it's going to be good. And then Ben Colbath is running on the Dem side. So he's very popular and respected. So it's going to be a good race. I think Karen will win. I think we'll have a split.
So Karen was defeated, and she had done, I mean, by I think everyone's account who knows what she did.
She was a finance.
She was a star. She was powerful, and she made a difference for Conway. And she lost because there were one of these years when there was a big
blue wave.
Democratic blue wave. And so what happens is Republicans win when there are Republican waves, Democrats win and there's not enough information, and people are making those judgments because they're picking their party this year and voting more or less straight party line. And I just love all of you out there who are paying attention, listening to Mark and me, and really thinking about the races, getting to know the candidates, getting to know the positions of the candidates. You're doing the right thing, and you're doing the hard work of being a good citizen. And it's a shame whether you favor Karen Umberger or you don't favor her, people ought to know what she's done and what she's accomplished and be able to make a judgment on the basis of that.
Yeah. I mean, besides we know we don't feel the Free Staters so much up here, so that sort of extra fringe movement.
We do. Well, so you're not in Madison and down with those people down there. There's some crazies down there.
Well, you might say they're crazy.
Well, Free Staters.
Yeah,
I think they're extremists. Yeah. I think anyone would agree.
Yeah. But I do think it's just generally, and even a congressional, because I've interviewed all the congressional candidates because it's an open seat. They're just good. I mean, it's amazing how many people are smart and qualified and work hard. You know, and you just wonder, and I asked them this once in a while, I said, how can you all seem like you qualify, and then you get to Washington and like you lose your brains?
Well, let's talk about money.
Because
you've got, what, 7 Democrats, 8 Democrats running for the Pappas House seat, just all Democrats running in that primary. And you only have 2 have a chance. You have Morris Sullivan and you have Stephanie Shaheen. And you're absolutely right. There are some really interesting candidates in that mix. Something could happen, and it could be a shocking surprise. But to try to get attention, to try to get your name out there, and particularly to do it all during the summer when no one's paying attention, we have this crazy beginning of September primary date. It's being changed to June in the next 2 years from now. But to try and even get attention from people without spending a pile of money is very difficult. It's a physically pretty big district, half of the state of New Hampshire. It's a big challenge, and it's a shame that that money is so dominant. And I just talked to a guy who's running for the House in New Hampshire this year, a Madison guy. I'll say his name. So, Todd Milliken is going to run for the House, and he's just put his name in and filed. And he's got a bug about that. I don't know if there's much he can do at the state level, because the Supreme Court and Citizens United decision, money is free speech kind of thing. It's a battle, but placing some limits and some controls is possible, and hopefully, and quick exposure. The filing of where you're getting your money from is public, but should be filed sooner and faster. They shouldn't have that long to keep it a secret right up until near Election Day. There are a variety of things we can do to make it a little bit more transparent.
Well, I mean, New Hampshire is still pretty cool though, because you get people who can run. I mean, anybody can run, and I was watching one of the news shows this morning. A guy, George Conway, who was he was a lawyer, and he's an anti-Trump person. I think his name is George. He used to be married to
the woman who was a press person for Trump. Yeah.
So smart and connected. He's running. I didn't know. He's running for Congress in New York, one of the districts in New York.
Yeah.
You only can do that in New York. You only have to be that person to run seriously in a state like New York. And us, you get all these people, and maybe they're not going to win this time, which they're not. But they're going to make a name for themselves, and they could do it.
Well, thank them for doing it. It's very much appreciated. And if nothing else, frequently they can bring issues to the forefront that we're not hearing from the candidates who are likely to win, and who are the ones who are so careful about what they say and so difficult to get to pin down to actually take positions. Sometimes those folks can nudge them in a direction they don't want to go.
Yeah,
which is good.
And you can tell the difference between the ones that are polished. I asked at the debate I did with these guys, Stephanie Shaheen. I just asked them all, are you moderate or progressive? And she said, I'm a New Hampshire Democrat. And one of the other candidates says, damn it, I'm a progressive.
Yeah.
You could just tell the polish, and so there's that too. To me, it's a fascinating. Bill Zelliff, he did it, right, 30 years ago.
Yeah.
So it can be done.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. George Epstein, ex-congressman.
Always possible.
Yeah, anything. All right, George. Well, by the way, it's George's birthday today.
Yeah.
So send him cards and money.
Absolutely. Anything's appreciated.
All right. Take care, George.
Thank you.
Always good to see you.
You too.